The Central Coast of California is the home of Grape Encounters Radio. Now, the region provides endless content for the show, but listeners are taken to the four corners of the world on a regular basis. The show points listeners to wineries, tasting rooms, restaurants, and other great places that leave visitors, well, with a lasting impression. Grape Encounters airs each week on radio stations across the US, reaching wine lovers coast to coast and around the world online. David Wilson is the host of Grape Encounters, and I've known David for a while now. And let me tell you one thing, he can talk a lot and he knows his wine. David, welcome.
Thanks, it's nice to be with you, Mike.
Grape Encounters, David, is about colourful people, the places, the ambience, the passion that makes wine drinking one of the world's most popular pastimes. Tell us more about your show and your love for wine.
Well, let me just put it to you this way. There is so much content out there about wine, and it really is kind of wine 101. Everybody wants to teach you about wine and talk tasting notes. You know, it has hints of leather and cassis and, you know, all of those things. And I just don't believe that's what consumers really want. So we created a show where wine is at the center of grander experiences, and it's not all about the wine, but wine is it's that nuclear rod in life. You know, it fuels everything, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the end all to beat all. There's a saying that goes like this, that wine should be a social lubricant that stimulates conversation about everything except the wine. And that's really, I think, at the core of what our show is, you know, we want to take people places where, you know, wine is certainly an important part of that experience, but that we don't get mired down in trying to dissect wine like we were an eighth grader in biology class tearing up a frog, you know? And so that's what we tried to do. And we also have a special filter on the show that filters out any listeners who are pretentious. They're not able to listen. It detects that, and it just shuts them out completely, because we really don't want anything to do with that.
Does that work better after the filter has had a few drinks?
Well, that's a good point. I do think people become less pretentious usually when they've had a few drinks. But the fact of the matter is that there's about 5% of the population, the wine-loving population, that is pretentious, and the rest are just regular people. But you know, that pretentious person is usually the guy with a new girlfriend and a new Tesla. And you know, he shows up at the tasting room and he wants to monopolize the conversation. And by the way, yes, it usually is a he. But you know, I think that we're starting to really understand that what consumers really want in wine is something very simple. I think there are two flavors of wine. As a friend of mine once put it, those flavors are yummy and yuck. And
I love that. I love it.
Right. And if you love it, drink it. And I tell people, you know, if you're in love with that, you know, $6 bottle of wine or $5 bottle of wine, if you can really say that you love it, stop right there. You know, you don't need $80 wine or $100 wine. And it's important for people to realize that price doesn't always make it better for everybody. You know, some people just can't even taste those nuances. So why would you even bother unless you've got money to burn and you want to impress somebody? But the other thing is that, you know, my show is also about helping people to find wines that they maybe like even better than what they're currently drinking. You know, a lot of times people don't really understand what it is that they like about wine. Wine is complicated from a flavor standpoint, and people will often tell me that they like certain wines, but they can't tell me why. So what we try to do is to help them to identify what it is they're really tasting, what they're really liking, and where there are other wines that they can find and enjoy that are going to give them at least the same amount of pleasure, but maybe even more pleasure. And then one other thing that I think is just really exemplifies what Grape Encounters is about is we are very committed to breaking rules and being mavericks. And as an example, one of the things that we do on a regular basis is we tell our listeners what to do if you buy a bottle of wine. Let's say you spend $30 or $40 on a bottle of wine. You take it home and you open it up and you don't like the wine. Now what? Well, a lot of people will, cook with it. Other people will pour it down the drain. Other people will have somebody else drink it. But the truth is you can actually, in many cases, fix the wine by using just a few things that you have around the house. And so that, I think, is really super useful information. And I can't tell you how many times listeners have contacted me and said, thank you for that, because I've had so many bad bottles of wine in my life, and now I don't ever have to waste wine or feel bad about the purchase that I made.
Isn't it funny? I haven't actually found any wine that I really don't like. I mean, it's sometimes, but sometimes you'll think, oh, that's okay, and you'll do it for mankind. You'll finish that bottle off. But other times you can find this absolutely delicious. Like my favourite wines, either a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot, a good Pinot, or a bad Pinot. But I still haven't found that really bad wine that I just wanted to pour out. I've just, as I said before, I've done it for mankind. I've quaffed it down.
Mike, you're going to be getting a package from me in a couple of days, and I'm going to solve this problem that you have about never having tasted bad wine.
I love it. Now, is Grape Encounters unique in then what it delivers?
In what we deliver?
Yes.
I think that we're really different than almost everything out there. One thing that if you go online and you look at the number of, for instance, podcasts that are out there about wine, I mean, there's probably thousands of them. And I periodically will go and I'll check out the most popular ones, and they're always trying to teach you about how to pair wine or how to understand wine. And not very many of them really tell you how to have, fun with wine. Like, for instance, I mean, what is the point of sitting and listening to somebody who's sitting at, one of the most sought after chateaus in France, talking about a $3,000 bottle of wine that most of us will never have the opportunity to taste. It's exciting, I guess, to go there, but I want to take my listeners places that they can actually go to, and where they can have an experience that's more than just standing in a tasting room. And I mean, I'll give you an example. There's a place that we're going to visit sometime really soon when the COVID thing is over, the country Moldova. I don't know that anybody really knows, or at least very few people probably know, that in Moldova there are literally hundreds of miles of underground wine caves. Hundreds of miles. They're interconnected. It's a veritable street grid underground that goes on for hundreds and hundreds of miles, and you can drive a car down there. And
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but see, people don't know about these things. That as big as that story is, it's just a complete unknown, even by people who are really, really astute about wine. So, those are the kinds of places that I'd like to take my listeners, because when you consider the fact that visiting Moldova is incredibly cheap, you can, if you're spending $50 a day there on your accommodations, on your food and everything else, you're living like a king.
Moldova, it sounds like something out of a Stephen King novel, doesn't it?
Yeah. And what's really amazing is when you go down into these catacombs, and there are all of these really incredible salons down there. They look like the Vatican, honestly.
Wow.
And there's a whole bunch of those places that you can go in and try different wines. And people like, Vladimir Putin, his entire wine collection, as I understand it, is in Moldovan caves. And then on top of that, the Moldovan people generally believe that if you have a home, you should have a wine cellar. And
Fantastic.
and many of them make their own wine. So that's a very approachable opportunity for my listeners that probably they're never going to hear about anyplace else. Or how about the spa in Japan, where there's I think it's probably like a 20-foot long bottle of wine that is pouring wine into a giant pool that people are bathing in and hopefully getting the therapeutic, effects of the wine. You can go to places like this. There are other places in the world where you can spend the night in a giant wine barrel, a real wine barrel. And these are things that you can do that you're not going to have to, spend, tens of thousands of dollars to experience. So, those I think are the things that I feel most responsible to bring to listeners. And I go do experiences like I mean, here's one that I love to share because I was in Calistoga County in California and doing tasting some various wines there. They've got a really fun wine country there. Well, they have this place called Moaning Cavern. And Moaning Cavern is I guess you can get lowered down into the cavern, and it's hundreds of feet down. And if you're daring, they'll strap you in, and then you lower yourself down. And it's a great example of the kinds of things that you can do while you're having a wine experience. And by the way, if you're going to get lowered into that cavern, you better drink some wine first, because it's the most frightening thing I've ever done in my life, especially when what it's called J-hook that allows you to be able to, lower your own weight. When that thing breaks open and suddenly you don't have that leverage any longer, it's terrifying. But I loved doing that all the same, because it's so different than just sitting in a tasting room. It's so different than, cheese and wine pairings. I could go the rest of my life without another cheese and wine pairing. It's just, I'd much rather pair great wine and fast food than do a fancy pairing that most people are not really going to experience in their life. People don't want to watch, they want to participate.
You also delved into a wine bar. Tell us about this. It really intrigues me, because not only do you work to live, you live to work.
Well, you see me in my lab coat right now. That's because in the evenings, certain evenings, I'll do, we call it Theater of the Vine, and I'll do performances where we blend wines. We could take wines from 3 or 4 different continents and blend them into something really terrific and create wines that you would not really be able to experience if it were not for the fact that we're doing that. And I wanted to be able to give people those experiences. I talked a moment ago about fixing wine. I wanted to be able to show people that, these very important lessons that you just don't find out there. So I decided that I would create the Grape Encounters Wine Bar, which would be a place where people could come from all over the world, and they do, by the way, and stay in the hotel across the street. There's a nice hotel, and then just come over and hang with us and be able to talk to, the folks that they listen to on the radio face to face, because that's an experience that has been really lost in our world, that ability to actually have contact with somebody face to face. And I laugh because no, we can't have contact with people face to face at all anymore.
Unless you wear a mask.
Well, that's exactly right.
So how do you drink your wine with a mask?
I actually finally bought burgundy colored masks. So I And that's better because I can just barely suck the wine through the material, but it doesn't stain, or the stains don't actually show that way. So
So where is the where if somebody wanted to pop into the to your wine bar, whereabouts is it? Where is the Grape Encounters headquarters? How's that? The headquarters.
it's right on the other side of this wall right here. Oh no, no.
Good on you.
So so we're in a place called Paso Robles wine region, and it's really a pretty big wine region. It's acreage wise, I think it's bigger than Napa and Sonoma, which people probably know a little bit better. But we are literally right in between, exactly in between San Francisco and Los Angeles. It's called the Central Coast of California, and it has a real strong coastal influence that allows us to grow some really remarkable grapes here. We grow probably one of the widest varieties of grapes that you'll find any place on the planet. Particularly good at Rhone grapes, so Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre. Not really unlike the kinds of wines made in Australia. Very similar varietals that we grow here. I hesitate to say this, but we are not quite, in most cases, where Napa is as far as the Bordeaux varietals like Cabernet and Merlot and a few of those really popular wines. But we're doing a really good job, and we're catching up with them where that's concerned. But I don't think that we can be touched when it comes to the Rhone grapes and also Zinfandel, which is something you also do quite well. We're very similar to your neck of the woods in terms of what we grow, and that really we offer that really lush, very fruit forward kind of wine that I think people really crave.
I'm hanging out for a wine. I don't know what wine I'll get. Probably something that, if it's bad, I'll do it for mankind. If it's great, I'll just do it for Mike Ryan. David Wilson from Grape Encounters. We have to do this more often. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. And we need to. You and I need to get together in your neck of the woods, and we'll rent an RV and we'll just tour the whole country. How's that sound?
It'll be Sideways Part 2 comes to Australia.
I can't wait till we have that opportunity. You and I have never had a chance to sit down and have a glass of wine together. I think that's long overdue, right?
A lot of talking. It'll be who can talk the most, David Wilson or Mike Ryan. I think David Wilson would win.
I stop talking when I drink wine because I'm very fearful of slurring, so I just shut up because I don't ever want anybody to hear me slur. So I don't. I just shut up when I drink.
David, a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Mike, you're welcome. So nice talking to you. Take care.